Hey everybody, Chris Lyon here with the Prize Foundation, and welcome to Film Prize University, presented by Prize Foundation and made possible by a generous grant from the Louisiana Entertainment, a division of Louisiana Economic Development, and in partnership with LFEA, the Louisiana Film Entertainment Association, as well as the many amazing sponsors of Prize Foundation. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Lyon. I'm a full-time filmmaker. I've been with the Prize Foundation since the beginning, and we are currently in our 11th year of Film Prize. Tonight, we are going to be doing our second event of Film Prize University 2022, which includes 8 total courses. Tonight's focus is going to be on screenplay, getting your idea out of your head and onto paper with screenwriter Craig T. Williams. Last time we had a fantastic event with writer and director Melissa Goslin, who talked about the formation of that idea, what it is to build a story from scratch. And tonight we're going to be putting pen to paper. But I do want to remind you before we move on to tonight that our next class is going to be Monday, March 21st at 7 p.m. And that's going to be pre-production, preparing to shoot with writer, director, and Film Prize winner, Travis Bible. So that's going to be a fantastic event. Please mark your calendars for that one. And for those of you who are not familiar with what Film Prize is, because Film Prize is the flagship event for Prize Foundation, Film Prize is a short film competition and festival where we invite filmmakers from all over the world to shoot a short film in Louisiana. You can film anywhere in Louisiana and be eligible for a $25,000 cash grand prize, which is the second largest cash prize for a short film anywhere in the world. However, if you film in Caddo Parish, which is the home of Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where Prize Foundation is based, that grand prize rises to $50,000, which is indeed the largest cash prize for a short film in the world. The rules are pretty basic. Shoot that short film in Louisiana or Caddo Parish if you want to go for 50 grand. It needs to be 5 to 15 minutes in length, narrative, short films, no documentary or animation. And you have to turn that film in along with your supporting material by July 12th, 2022. That's a Tuesday coming just after July 4th. So be sure that you're taking the time in account that's going to take for you to get your production written and cast and crewed and pre-produced and everything. And that's kind of what we're doing here tonight with Film Prize University. So if you're interested in Film Prize, go check out prizefest.com. All the rules and information are there. We're actually offering half price registration for all people who are viewing this class. All you have to do when you are signing up for Film Prize is in the little code box, type in FP University, all caps, no spaces, FP University at checkout, and you'll get $25 off that registration. So that's enough about Film Prize. I want to get in and introduce our guest tonight, who is Craig T. Williams. But Craig is actually going to be covering a lot of things tonight. He's going to be covering script software, writing short film screenplays, as well as a really important piece, which is how to write something so that other people will read it and see your vision in their mind's eye. It's a crucial skill that Craig's going to be discussing tonight. Of course, he'll be opening that up to questions at the end. But Craig is a writer and producer who is currently a part of the prestigious 2021 Warner Media Access Writers Program, formerly the HBO Access Writers Program. And he is only one of 20 writers from an application pool of 4,000 people who tried to get into this program. And Craig has written and produced close to 100 film projects, including short films, documentaries, web series, features, and he and his wonderfully supportive wife of 20 years, Rosalind, and his 17-year-old son are all currently living in New York. So welcome Craig to the stage tonight. Very excited to have him. And Craig, take it away.
Yay. So I'm going to be talking about the screenplay format and what I think is important as a short filmmaker. And I've made a lot, I've produced a lot. I have ushered many, many different filmmakers from their first project to the celebration, at a screening. So I know what's entailed. And so the most important part of this process is, of course, the script. I'm not one of those people that believes like the script is a blueprint and you can kind of take it from where you want to. No, it has to be on the page, because when it's on the page, everyone is clear about their function. Everybody's clear about the direction. Everybody's clear about the tone. Everybody is clear about what they're being asked to do. And that includes actors, cinematographer, your DP, your PAs, everybody on your team is going to take their cue about their what they're going to be doing from the scripts that you write. So it can't just be a suggestion. It's got to be there on the page. And hopefully, for those of you who have written scripts, or for those of you, and you can write in the chat if you've never written a script before, please let me know in the chat. If you've never written a script before, I want to give you a great start to, and even if you've written a couple of scripts for whatever purpose, I want to give you a great first start, just give you some tips that are going to be helpful for you on this journey. So first thing is software, right? There's all kinds of software out there. There is the sort of granddaddy of them all. It's called Final Draft. It costs about $250. If you're a student, it costs like $99 or something like that. So people call it the industry standard, but they only call it the industry standard because it's been around for so long. And for many years, it was the only choice for screenwriters, which is why I use it. In recent years, last 5 or 10 years, there's been an explosion of software for screenwriters, and a couple that I'll mention. Final Draft, right? And there's also one called Fadein, Fadein. There's one called Writer's Duet. I think that one's free. And there's one that a lot of people use called Celtx, Celtx. Someone just posted that there. So my only issue with Celtx is that it's a rental. So you're always renting every month, paying, and it's a nominal fee. Maybe it's $5 or something like that. But, say you just get tired of using it, and then you've got all this work on it, and then you've got to figure out how to get your work off this server, and then so that you own it. I don't like renting it. I like owning it. Fadein costs about $80. That's, more affordable, but you can use the freer versions until you've committed to screenwriting. And don't use Word, don't use Google Docs, don't use any of those things because it just looks sloppy and unprofessional. So if you want to be a filmmaker, get the tools you need to be a filmmaker. And one of those is, yes, Writer's Duet. And one of those things is your screenwriting software. And I suggest a book. It's called The Screenwriter's Bible. And you can get it on Amazon. I think it costs like $20 or $25 or something like that. And it's all the ways that you format a screenplay. So it'll tell you where the action goes, where the dialogue goes. It'll tell you how to put in a text or a phone call, how to put in a flashback. So you can get that, and that'll help you. And once you learn formatting, you're good. You'll just understand where it goes and when it goes. And each software, the software is Final Draft or even Writer's Duet or Fadein, they understand that you're writing a screenplay. So each element will get prompted so that you are being able to just write your scripts and write your stories. So what goes in a screenplay? So I thought the easiest way to do this would be to pull up a short film that I wrote. So this is something that I wrote for a thing, doesn't matter why, but it's a short film, short script, right? It's 10 pages, and I am going to share my screen, and I'm gonna pull it up. So here we go, right? So it's no title page. Okay, so simple things, right? This is Final Draft. As I said, this is Final Draft 12. You can see up here in the top. I've been using this since I think it was Final Draft 2 or 3. I don't even remember anymore. All right, so a couple of things to show you before we get to the script. Title page, right? There's your title page where your title goes by Craig and Rosalind. So my wife and I wrote this one together. And here's just my phone number and email address. Sometimes when I'm sending it out, what I'll do is I'll put my rep's information on it, or I'll put my lawyer's information on it. You don't need your copyright numbers. You don't need your WGA, which is the Writers Guild Association. I'll talk about that. Remind me to talk about that. So you don't need any other information on it except the title, who wrote it, if it's based on something. So if it's based on a book or a play, you might want to write that on there, and your contact information. That is it. Keep it clean. Some people will use fancy titles. Some people use, some kind of title treatment for their, you don't, if you don't, you don't want to make it too ridiculous to pull, to pull focus. But so just keep it simple because people just need to read it. The most important thing about a script is keeping it simple. All right. So here are the elements of a screenplay, right? Here is this is called well, we call it a slug line, but really it's scene description. And in the slang of screenwriting, somebody will say your slug line. And so your slug line options are interior or exterior. INT is interior, EXT is exterior. You want to make it always clean and really simple, right? So you're telling us where we are. That's what a slug line does. It tells your reader where you are. I'm in a brownstone, bedroom, time of day, dash, morning, clean, simple. If your slug lines are too long, it gets cumbersome and nobody wants to read it. Just so want to keep it simple. A lush modern bedroom, Imogene Dawn. All right, so you'll see that Imogene Dawn, that's my character's name, is capitalized. The first time that your character appears, any character in your script, it is capitalized. Why is that? So your actors know when they come in, so that casting, when you get to casting your projects, your casting director is going to go through your script and they're going to look for those capitalizations so they know who to cast. So, and then I think it's also important to put ethnicity, age, and then a couple of phrases, adjectives, something that tells you something about the character. Now, since she's my lead character, I leave myself a little bit more space here to explain a little bit more about her because she's going to be the one that's going to be leading us through the story. And so let's talk a little bit about the story, right? So this is a 10-page script. And as the Film Prize parameters, your script can be anywhere between 5 and 15 pages. So in talking about writing your script, I have a character here. This story is her journey. She's going to get us from the beginning to the end. It's going to be about where she goes. It's going to be about what happens to her. And short films in particular are about, for me, the most important moment in this character's life or journey. It's not something that just kind of happened. It's not something that maybe sort of happened. This year, out of all the story that you can tell in a character's life, and think about your own life. If you were telling the short film of your own life, what is the most pivotal moment of your life? When did it start? When did it end? And how did it end? How did it end? Which is really important to know. Where did it start? Where did you start? And then what was the journey to get you from here to there? And in that journey, it's really important to think about how your character is going to be active, doing something. Your character has a goal. They're not somebody who's sitting around watching things and watching other things happen. Your character has to have a goal for the day. And a goal can be really simple. A goal can be getting from home to work, right? A goal can be, and it has to be tangible. So falling in love is not tangible because your audience can't see that your character has fallen in love. But getting married is tangible. So you're getting married on Valentine's Day, right? And it's February 1st, and you've decided in 2 weeks, even though you don't have a spouse, you don't even have a mate or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, you're going to get married on February 14th. That means the character's journey, when we meet them, is to get married in 14 days. They got to find a spouse, find a wedding, do all those things, fall in love, and get it done by February 14th. So it's really important that when you're writing these stories, whatever your stories are, that your main character has a goal and a mission. So how are they going to get there, right? And so the movie is all the obstacles that come up against your character's goal. So if, her goal, Imogene, my character here, is to get married in 14 days, and she doesn't even have a boyfriend, just to kind of use, let's all make her heterosexual for now. And she doesn't even have a boyfriend. That means she's got to get a boyfriend. Where does she get a boyfriend? How does she get a boyfriend? What's her first thing that she does? Is she going to go on a dating app? Is she going to put out an ad? Is she going to ask her friends? So what happens? She meets a guy. Is this the right guy? All these things you start to build into what is going to keep your character from getting to their goal. And the more you keep your character away from their goal, the better your movie is. All right, so let's keep moving through this. I am not looking at the chat, so I don't know if there are questions, but I'm going to keep rolling along it. Oh, there we go. Cool. All right, so remember, questions just pop in the chat. It's cool, and I'll take a little break and then get to them. All right, so Imogene Dawn, black, 30, guarded. Her face is open, her heart is closed. A bohemian soul sister with expensive tastes. She sits up in bed, a melancholy look at the other side of the bed. It hasn't been slept in. Okay, so here's what's important about this little exchange, right? It's important for me, I think, and important for you to learn as a script writer, as a screenwriter, that you want to tell us who your character is and what they're doing and how they feel about what they're doing. So if it just says she sits up in bed, it hasn't been slept in, I don't know how she feels about it, right? She could be happy that she, if you got like 4 kids, a husband and a dog and 3 cats, and you slept in the bed alone, you're like, hallelujah, right? But if you have what this is telling you, she sits up in bed, a melancholy look at the other side of the bed, it hasn't been slept in, you know that something's wrong. Something has happened that didn't go right. So when writing your stories and writing your characters, and especially these are called, people call them different things. They call them scene descriptions, they call them stage action, all kinds of things. But this is the part where you're telling us what is happening. Not only who it's happening to, but how it's happening to them. And what is their emotion. So we've got a brownstone bedroom, a lush modern bedroom, really simple, right? So you don't need to tell me that, there's a 4-poster bed. You don't need to tell me that the carpeting is 4 inches thick. You don't need to tell me any of that, because what the script also is clues to your team about how they're going to go about their job. So a production designer reading this, a lush modern bedroom, right? So they're thinking modern, right? Their brains are working in this particular a way where they're going to read that and they're going to get pictures about what the bedroom looks like, right? So Imogene Dawn. So the character, the actress is going to play that. She's going to see 30, guarded. Her face is open. Her heart is closed. So this is a woman who is, on the edge, but also, this is giving your actress clues into how she's going to play this character. A bohemian soul sister with expensive tastes. That is for your costume designer, right? The costume designer is going to start to get clues about how she should shop. So your screenplay is giving out all these clues to your team about what's going to happen. She sits up in bed, a melancholy look at the other side of the bed. It hasn't been slept in, right? So now your DP, your cinematographer, the person who's going to be shooting your film, now sees what their job is, what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the bed. We're going to see the empty side of the bed that hasn't been slept in with the covers folded back. So that means the production designer knows how the bed should be made. So you see how when you're writing a script, all these things are giving clues to your team about how to proceed. All right, so let's just kind of move on to the next. We're only going to do a little bit of this. A tussle sheet and blanket. So once that scene ends, right? Okay, so we move to the next scene. Brownstone living room. So what you could do sometimes, if, say, my character Imogene got up and walked to the living room, then instead of saying morning, it would say continuous, because that's showing us continuous action. But I decided that without saying that this happens a few minutes later, I'm just going to kind of jump to the next scene, right? But there's still I'm hanging on to what's happened beforehand. A tussled sheet and blanket lay on the stylish couch, stylish, right? Clues for your production designer, remnants of a makeshift bed. Your prop person is seeing this also. That means makeshift bed usually means pillowcase, blanket, all that kind of stuff. Drinking his morning coffee, props. And now you've got a new character, Horatio, black, 35, rugged, big bone, but always tailored. He walks toward her. Imogene, open, ready, expected. Horatio walks right by her, no eye contact. Imogene snatches the sheet and blanket off the couch. All right. So a lot of information in there in a very dense, very short period of time. Right. So we've got props. We've got emotion from the characters. We've got their relationship. Right. So they're not talking. Something happened. We don't know what, but something happened. I think it's really important that you give really vibrant adjectives. Right. So Imogene snatches the sheet and blanket off the couch. What does that say? It says she's angry. Right. So if you just would write Imogene takes the blanket off the couch, it doesn't really land. Your actress is going to ask, well, is she happy? Is she excited to make the bed? What does that mean? So you're always adding emotion so that we're following your character's emotional journey. All right. So here I decided to put a little bit later. Imogene fully dressed, sexy and provocative, a suit of armor that hides her misery. So again, that is a note for the costume designer, because somebody's going to say, how does she dress? Sexy and provocative, a suit of armor that hides her misery. So without saying she wears a blazer and a low-cut dress and high-heeled shoes and fancy, without doing all of that, you're giving a sense of the character. And that gives your team, again, the way for them to come to you with their ideas. All right, she checks out the outlet, no charger. Where's my charger, right? So we're about halfway down the page and somebody speaks for the first time. She rummages through her a half-packed suitcase. Horatio enters, watches her undo his careful packing. Okay, more information, right? Stuff that people who are going to be reading it are taking it, right? So first of all, now you've got Horatio, and so he knows what kind of character he is. He's the kind of guy who packs carefully. Everything's folded. We know from earlier that he is always tailored. So what's in that suitcase? Good-looking suits, probably laundered shirts that are pressed and folded correctly straight from the cleaners. So you're getting an image, right, of your characters and how they live, what their class is, what their status is in the world, what their home is dressed like. And all this is important information in telling your story, in the building blocks of your story. Imogene absentmindedly wraps her charger cord around her hand, a nervous fidgeting. I'm giving the character some emotional business to do. So the actress is like, okay, she's nervous about something. They wait, hoping the other will speak. A marital standoff. Then finally, then we get some dialogue. You're really just going to go, come with me. Everything I built is here. What about? So now we're seeing, this subtle, but also very tense, because now what the actors can do and what you can do as directors, which is help the actors form the scene. So what is going on here? These are two people who got mad at each other, had some kind of fight. The tension is still in the room and no one wants to give in. And so for those of you who are married, maybe you know something about that, right? You can sort of put yourself in that place or any kind of relationship. You can put yourself in that place where, there's a fight, but there isn't a fight, and everybody's looking to kind of, win, but they're not really engaging, but there's just a lot of tension in the room. Horatio looks at her cleavage, right? Nobody will be looking at me. What is that? Fuck that. Is that supposed to mean? You don't need me, right? Nope. Imogene isn't having this conversation again. A heavy moment between them. Nobody gives in. Stubbornness wins. Imogene knocks the suitcase to the floor. She's out. right? So what's important about that kind of progression of the scene, we see that how it ends. What is the emotional ending of the scene? So now you know where it started, you know where it ended, you know what happened. This is tension. This is really your first scene of the movie. So your spectators watching it, people watching it, and people reading it. So no, it's like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with this couple? What happened? I can't wait to find out what's going on, right? So it keeps people engaged. And then ending with something that helps carry us into the next scene. Imogen knocks the suitcase to the floor. She's out. And that takes us to the next scene, right? So we don't know what happened, right? But now she's in her big closet, a walk-in closet, expensive purses, again, for the costume, for the costume designer, but also for the production designer. They kind of work together. That's actually costumes. Her expensive purses, and your costume designer will be like, you expect me to get a whole closet full of expensive purses? Do you know how much expensive purses cost? So you got to work that out in your budget. So don't think about budget yet. She hears the front door slam. All right. So here I capitalized slam. And the reason that you can do that is sometimes you want to call attention to things that used to be in the way that scripts used to be written, where every sound effect, and some people still do this, is sort of capitalized. And that just brings people's attention to what you think is important. And that's really what it's about. What you're doing in the script is always pointing your reader and your audience to what you as the writer and probably the director thinks is important. We're always focusing their energy. We're always focusing their eye. I want you to look over here. I want you to look at her purses. I want you to see how she lives. I want you to hear the door slam, and I want you to watch her sink, because she thought maybe there was a chance that they could make up, but there's not, because he just left, right? And then she's like, all right, he's gone. I'm gonna pull myself together. One last look in the mirror, everything is in place. She allows herself a brief smile, grabs a scarf, leaves, right? So she's gonna suck it up and go on about her day. So I'm gonna stop sharing here. I would love if anybody has any questions, if you want to tell me anything about your what you're working on or what you are worried about at this time, or just any questions that you might have.
Brian, welcome to the stage.
Okay, hey, how's everybody doing?
Good. Hey, Brian.
Hey, all right, thanks for doing this, first of all. But secondly, to my question, so I've written a few scripts, pretty small stuff, mostly just shorts. But being kind of new to the area and just kind of getting in touch with a lot of people at Film Prize, what are some options for people that, like to write and be behind the camera, but may need cast and crew, but, don't have Facebook, or there's not a lot of, community things going on, or seemingly to us?
I think that's a question for you.
I think it is too. So Brian, you're looking for places to connect with other creatives in the community. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. Like how,
Yeah.
like, because I guess it's kind of, I'm asking him because he was a writer, so I figured that was what it was for. But that's kind of its own enigmatic part of the whole process. So I imagine that there might be some writer tools, or maybe networks or connections that he may be aware of that other writers don't know about. Like everybody sees, cover fly, or backstage cast or anything, but are there other options for people on the more, for lack of better words, office side of the film production process that want to network, who aren't acting and stuff like that?
Sure. Well, so just from my perspective about the Northwest Louisiana community, is that Film Prize is really the place to start, right? There's actually a film appreciation class that's being put on right now at the Robinson Film Center. It's being put on by Wendell Riley, who used to actually work here at the Prize Foundation, and he's doing a whole set of film analyses, talking about different aspects of film appreciation and filmmaking. He's a filmmaker himself, so that'd be something to get plugged into potentially. And then we're going to be having, now that kind of COVID's kind of coming back down again, we're going to be having some in-person meetups and group settings here in the spring. So you'll definitely want to check out the Film Prize Facebook page there. And then as you begin to meet people at those events, there are kind of groups that get together and write or talk about their films together, but there's not like a formal writing group that I'm aware of in Shreveport. So that's something that perhaps you could start yourself.
Maybe, and if there's time for me to ask like one more like specific writing question.
Sure.
When working on your scripts, do you find it better to write around what you have accessible, or write the story and then boil that down to what you need? So say if, I only have a buddy's house and a studio garage to maybe shoot something, should I write a short that maybe focuses on the smaller scale, or do I just write these stories and then start boiling them down once they're in production?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've done it both ways, right? So I have written a script based on, I know that I have an apartment, I have a roof, I have a park that I can go to, and I'm going to have 4 characters, right? And then with that, either if I'm writing it or if someone's hired me to write it, and sometimes I am working with actors, or sometimes I'm working with a director who needs a script. They're like, all right, this is what I have access to. I need to write a story in this environment, and this is the kind of character that I want to play. And so then you have to map out using those locations. It's like, okay, I got these 4 locations. And because this is also what I can afford. This is also cheap. I can use my buddy's house or my parents' house or something like that. So you can absolutely build stories out of those. Using your parents' house, and maybe they have a big backyard, or they have like a dank basement or a dusty attic, or so it's taking those elements and then figuring out, what is the genre, what am I writing, what kind of thing am I writing? Is it going to be horror, is it going to be comedy, whatever that is, and then imagining some scenarios, right? So now you've got your locations, and now you need characters. So who are the characters in the world that you're building? So you can absolutely do it that way. And then the other way is what we call blue skying it, right? Where you write something and you are not holding back anything. And you can rent a helicopter that's going to fly around the Empire State Building. You're going to shoot at the White House. The whole cast is going to spend a weekend in Monte Carlo, gambling. Whatever the story is, you kind of blue sky it, and you don't worry about budget. You don't worry about spending. You don't worry about cast. You don't worry about the cost of costumes. You're writing a big, epic, thriller, or a big, epic road movie, or romantic comedy, or a heist movie. So it really is sometimes genre dependent, and who you are as a writer. So I would suggest, that specifically for something like Film Prize, which, you don't want to blow out your budget doing this, is do think about the community that you live in and what you do have access to. And then based on the story that you want to tell, whatever story you've come up with, how can you place it in these environments? Because what's happened to me more than a couple of times is that, we've written something and we go to the location. One time we wrote something and there was a scene that took place on a roof, and we had scouted the roof, right? It was great. We could go up there. It was easy to get to. But on the day of the shoot, we got there and there was a neighbor who also had a roof deck just on the other side, who was blasting reggae music. And we could not get to this person. We could not find them. We could not get their attention. It wasn't the same building. So it's not like we could go to the apartment and knock on their door and say, do you mind turning down your music so we can shoot? And we waited like a half hour, and we decided that if we don't do something different, we are going to lose this location. We've already lost the location. We're going to lose the day and not be able to shoot this scene. So it's important that when you're writing, you understand the journey of the scene, which is why I'm always, what's the emotional meaning behind the scene? Because once you know what the scene is supposed to do, then you can really be able to shoot it anywhere. presumably. There's always adjustments that you have to make. The roof, we were looking up at the sky, we were doing this, but so we moved it to a park because a park is free, right? So we still had open air, we still had all these other things that we were able to add, but now we didn't have the kind of vista of New York that we had found on the roof. And we just had to scrap that's not what's going to happen. So, but we moved it to the water, which then also presented some other problems. It was a little busier. It was a little louder. So then we had sound issues, not sound issues that were a problem. We knew we were going to have sound issues if we didn't deal with it at that moment. So the wind and all that other stuff, but we were prepared with equipment and stuff. But so sometimes you do have to be flexible because sometimes you lose locations or sometimes something doesn't happen. But as far as the writing part of it right now, yeah, just kind of think about what you have access to, and that'll help your budget in the long run.
All right, sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian, take the stage. Brian with a Y.
Yes. Hey, Brian.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little new to this. I do have a question. When you're trying to present your script to somebody like Netflix or Hulu, or even just your local actor buddy who lives next door,
right?
What words do you want to use? Do you want to use big words, or do you want to use small, like kindergarten words that everybody understands? What is the tone of wording?
Now, when you say tone of wording, are you talking about what you're going to say to them to get them to be a part of your project?
No, as far as when you just showed your script,
yeah,
and you had very basic words and very basic communication explaining the scene,
right?
Do you want to go over the top by using big words, or like that's kind of what, or I guess that's more of my question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I just want to make sure that I help you with the answer. So, the most important thing to communicate is why you're telling the story. Okay. So, like the script that I just read was kind of sort of based on something that happened to my wife, where she, we live in New York, and she was walking down the street, and some where the story ends up going is she ends up helping some homeless guy, and who's in a wheelchair, and he can't move his wheelchair, and she ends up pushing him to his building and, saying, is this good? And he's like, thank you. And, my wife goes on about her day. And then I took that story. It's like, what if something went wrong? Which it could have. I'm like, what are you doing? Pushing, people around in wheelchairs. But, it was all fine. But, my imagination, because I'm the writer, and then hers, and then we started to talk about it. It's like, what happened if, right? So the story came out of this, sort of act of kindness, act of generosity. But what happens when an act of kindness goes wrong? So when you're talking to an actor, Netflix and Hulu, that's a whole other thing. But when you're talking to an actor, trying to get them to be a part of your project, or even explaining the script, for me, and it's been my experience, that you always want to tell the why. Why did you write this story? And then if the why is really clear, and when you're explaining to people, when you're thinking about it, that'll really show up on the page. Hulu and Netflix, it's really the same thing, right? So I've gotten a pitch for like Warner Brothers and for HBO, and I'm always explaining the why. Usually they've read a synopsis or maybe read the script, maybe not, but they've invited me into pitch, and I am now going to share why I'm telling the story, in addition to the things that are happening in the world and all that kind of stuff. But you want to make it, there's no advantage or disadvantage to big words or little words. It's just the simplicity of your message and the passion behind why you're going to tell this story and why you're the one who's going to do it.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm partially disabled, so I use a lot of small words, and people tell me like my scripts are a little too basic. Maybe I need to try to expand my vocabulary a little.
Well, that's also it's also character dependent. So don't think, okay, first of all, stop talking to those people. If somebody's not going to make you feel good about your writing and not going to help you get better at it, don't talk to them. You got to find people who are going to help elevate the stories that you want to tell, right? So maybe what they're saying is like you haven't developed the voice yet, or maybe what they're saying is like your script isn't clear yet, or your story isn't clear. But that has nothing to do with vocabulary or big words. That is simply a function of what is the story you're trying to tell, and making sure that you're putting the words in the mouth of your characters of the story you want to tell, but also in the stage and the screen directions, right? So if somebody walks across the room and picks up a glass of water, right, that's simple, right? So and there's nothing complicated to it. What you want to add to that is, Sheila stomps across the room, grabs a glass of water off the table, and gulps it down, right? So that's telling you something. I don't know what, but that's more active and more action than somebody just going to pick up a glass, which is sometimes what I read in screenwriters is like, she picks up a cup of coffee, or she reads a book, or all these other things, right? There's got to be emotion and drive behind it so that or if it's funny, right? So it's always about the tone. It's always about the world that you're building. You're always leaning into the genre of the story that you're telling. So again, comedy, drama, all those other things, thriller, action, make sure that those stage directions aren't simply this person does this, but how does it like drive the action? If it's a thriller, right? Somebody, walking across the room quickly, right? And we're watching their feet, we know that they're scurrying across the room, right? So now we can visualize it. And that's what you want to do. You want your scripts to really evoke pictures and emotion and make people see what's happening. So the simplicity works, but add simplicity with emotion, and that'll help what you're writing.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
You're welcome, Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. And we do have a written question in the Q&A from Beck Miller. And I know that you covered this a little bit, Craig, but it says, where do you find your biggest inspiration? And perhaps Beck can give us some more detail on how do you mean, like in the sense of finding your story or finding your character motivations, but perhaps you might be able to take a stab at that, Craig.
It comes from a lot of different things. It comes from life. I'm married and I have a teenager who's walking behind me, taking dessert, the cake that he's going to eat all himself and not share with anybody. So it's like moments like that, right? So it's all kinds of things that happen that, and I have a note in my phone where either there's a character that I might think of, or I might see something, on the subway or on the street. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I'll just kind of write it down. And it isn't necessarily a story yet, but it's a moment, or there's a character. A lot of you might be telling stories about people in your family, about things that have happened to you growing up. So those are the kinds of things where that's where kind of inspiration comes from. It's just living, because we're all telling stories that are hopefully have relevance to all of us. So we all, have a job and we go to work and we go here and we go there. So you're taking these basic kind of life things that are happening and you're saying to yourself, what if? And then what if I get married 14 days from now? What if I woke up one day on a ship and I didn't know how I got there, right? That becomes born identity. And so what if, somebody killed my parents? I'm a simple farm boy living on a space station, 2,000 years from now, that's Star Wars. What if I went to a beach and a shark started killing people, right? So you're just taking sort of these ordinary moments and you're deciding the genre, you're deciding where it takes place, what kinds of things you like to write, whether you think things are funny, or whether you look at life with a sense of humor, or whether you look at life with a sense of darkness, or whether you look at life with a sense of wonder. So those could be, that could be a sci-fi movie. So think about the things that you watch. Like, what do you watch on a consistent basis, whether it is whatever TV shows you're watching or whatever films you love. So if whatever genre you're drawn to, you're going to take those germs of an idea and you're going to write that genre. You're going to write that sci-fi. You're going to write that romantic comedy because that's what you love to watch. So just think about, simple things like, the time that you got proposed to, or the birth of your baby, or when your mother-in-law, fell into the pool at the summer barbecue, and then build off of those things.
I do want to ask one of my own, and it's one that I hear come up in these kinds of conversations all the time, which is writer's block and what to do about it. What are the kind of exercises that you can do to prepare yourself to write, to get used to writing, and then what to do when things aren't flowing?
Right. All right. So sometimes I give a little tough love with the idea of writer's block, because writers, I don't believe there's such a thing as writer's block, right? I think what's happening when people can't write, it's the fear of perfection, the fear of getting it wrong, the fear that it'll never be right. There's a fear involved in it, right? If you want writing to be your job, then you have to get up and do it every day. I get up and I do it every day, even when I don't feel like it, especially when I don't feel like it. And it doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and write 10 pages. I may only write 1 page. I may only write like a page and a half, maybe only half a page. And then I'm like, you know what? That's all I got today. Because life, because of things that I'm working on, because of a whole bunch of other things that are happening. So you have to give yourself grace in this thing called writing. Because if you think about it, you wanting this to be your job, whether you want to be a TV writer or a feature film writer, there's no such thing as plumber's block. There's no such thing as cardiologist block, right? So your surgeon's coming in and they've got you open and you're under the knife and you're anesthesia, and your cardiologist comes in, your doctor, your heart surgeon comes in, it's like, I can't, I'm blocked today. It's like, whoa, get to work, dude, right? You show up, you do the work. So the thing that I offer to writers, which is you have to habit yourself out of the block. Writing is a habit. Writing is a work habit. It's not done by inspiration. Some of you out there may say, I write by inspiration. I don't write for 3 weeks. Then I get an idea and I'm like, and I write it all in a weekend. That's fine, but that's not a job. Right? If I'm going to work for a TV show, they're not going to wait for me to have inspiration. If I'm hired to write somebody's project, they're not going to wait for me to have inspiration. I have to show up for my writing. So let's just say you've had a hard time writing, right? Not block, forget block. That's a thing, not a thing. You just had a hard time. It's busy. You're nervous about it. You don't want to mess it up. So what I suggest is the 10-minute rule, right? So, and it's 10 minutes a day. You're going to sit down, you're going to, whatever time of day works for you, whether you're a morning writer or a late night writer and you haven't been writing, sit down, get a timer, use your phone, get an egg timer, whatever, 10 minutes, open up a document. Doesn't even have to be a script. Doesn't even have to be the software. It can be a Word document or a Pages document. And I want you to start moving your fingers. I'm writing the story about my aunt Jezebel, who was a burlesque dancer in the 20s. I don't know what else to write because I don't know who she is. But if I did, I might imagine that, she also landed planes. She was a pilot, and she secretly worked for the German government, and I'm just making stuff up, right? So I'm just kind of, and I'm writing this, right? Because it's not thinking, it's actually writing. So, and you do that for 10 minutes where you just don't judge it, don't stop, just do it. 10 minutes, the timer goes off, you close the document, turn off your phone and go on about your day, but you're gonna do the same thing, the same time, the next day. 10 minutes, that's all, right? And so what can happen is some days, 10 minutes is only 10 minutes. Some days, 10 minutes might turn into an hour because you're not thinking about it, right? You're not judging the end. You're not judging that this is going to be bad. You're not judging that somebody's going to read this and hate it. So we have to get out of our way by making sure that we have a habit that supports work, not a thing that you're doing that's all based on emotion, which we don't need when we write.
That was really great. Thank you. We do have another hand raised here, so let's bring up EJ.
Hello, how are you guys doing? Can
Great.
you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So my question is, when you're formatting your script, how important is it like to format, like say for instance, intercut or cut to, the different transitions and montage? Because what I found is like, if you're researching things, sometimes they'll say, okay, cut to goes to the right side of the page, or, so my question is, how do we know which is the correct way, or is there no correct way?
Great question. Okay, so there was a time, and things change even in screenwriting, where cut to happened between each scene. You actually don't need it, right? Because we're going from scene to scene anyway, and cut to takes up a lot of space in your script. If you take out all the cut tos, you may cut your script by like 2 pages if you're writing a feature, right? So you don't need it. But say you want to be intentional about what one scene does to another scene. So you might put in like smash cut, or slides into the next scene, or so you want to use it judiciously. You don't want it after every scene. But if there's something you're trying to say about how one scene leads to the next scene, and you want to tell us how that happens, whether it's a flashback, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a fantasy sequence, whether it's a dream sequence, that stuff's important, because your script is your guide through your story, right? And you want your reader to always keep moving to cause and effect. This happened, and so that made this happen. And then because that happened, then this happened. And if you need a transition, whatever that is, to get it to the next thing, then do that. But just kind of the basic cut to, whether it goes left or right, no more cut tos. We don't need them anymore.
Okay, and what would you say about the montage scenes? Because normally when I'm writing and I'll do the montage, it'll be on the left, and then I'll just have montage in caps. And then under that, of course, is the scene heading for each. For each, like
Right.
If they're in the mall walking hand in hand or something like that.
Right. So my thought around montages is that you can absolutely use them if you think it's important to the story, right? But a montage, right? Say you have a montage that, like you said, like they're walking through the mall, and then they go to eat pizza, and then they go from the pizza, they go to the park, and then from the park, they go back to her house or his house, and we're showing this montage. So what is the purpose of the montage? What are we getting from that? What's the emotional journey of the montage, right? So, and can that be done in one scene? And sometimes, newer writers think, well, I need to show this, that, they went from here to here, and then the date went here, and then from there, and then we're watching them fall in love. So if the thing is that they're falling in love, you can do that in one scene. Because the problem with a montage is if you've got 6 events happening in a montage, that's 6 things that you have to shoot. Right? You've got to change clothes, you got to change locations, you may have to add props, you may have to add characters. So if you're writing a short film and you really only have a limited amount of time and resources, think about what the montage is giving you. What happens at the beginning, and how does your character or characters evolve during the montage? And can you do that in one scene? Can you do that with a scene on the park bench? Can you do that while they're, doing yoga? So that you don't have to clog up your production with all this stuff. And it's about trusting too, right? Because the audience, we all have film language. We've all watched tons and tons of movies and TV and all that kind of stuff. So when we see 2 people meet, and this is a romantic comedy, we know they're going to fall in love. The trick for you then is, how do you make it interesting? How do you make it interesting as a writer? How do you make it interesting as a director if you're directing it? And so two people sitting on a bench, maybe it's not exciting, but what can you do to make it different so that, you know, there's some conflict and there's something at stake, and you can do that in one scene. You don't always need a montage.
Okay, thank you.
So we are getting to our 8 o'clock hour, and I know we got a couple minutes, started a couple minutes late, but I did want to take an opportunity to first thank you, Craig, for being on with us today and for dispensing all the knowledge to these folks. For those of you who tuned in late, and for those of you, while you're not watching now, you can watch later. We're going to be posting this up to our website. We actually had a slight technical delay on the first one, but that's going to be coming here as well. So thank you, Craig. Everybody give him a virtual round of applause for being with us today. Are there any websites for or platforms that I can use to do research and read several textbook scripts to gain a feel of style and rhythm for script creation? I know that there are some out there. Craig, maybe you have some off the top of your head?
Sure. There is Script Slug. There is, and it depends on if you're writing for TV or feature films. So if there's TV stuff, there's a whole site, okay, for film, cool. Yeah, so you wanna, somebody just sent me the screenplay for Michael Clayton, which is an older film starring George Clooney, and it's one of the best written film scripts ever. So I will send that to Chris and he can disseminate it to you. But you want to find, you know, you want to find the movies that you love and see if there's a script for it. Right now, there's a script for everything. All right. And also it's a time of year, Oscar time, awards time, where people start sending out, you know, Oscar winning scripts or scripts that have been good this year. So you want to look for those. My big note to you all is start to build relationships with other writers, because it's from other writers that you can get these resources. So whether you find an online group or you know, somebody just put up Michael Clayton. There you go. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so you want to read tons of script. I would opt over reading scripts than books, but that's me. Because I just think you're going to learn so much more about how things look on the page. So where the action goes, where the dialogue goes, how much dialogue is there, what's the progression of, what's the build, how people are introduced. So when you're reading, you pay attention to those elements, because those are the things that you're going to have to duplicate in your scripts.
Fantastic. Someone wrote, you want to be reminded about the Writers Guild.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so real quick, you don't need to register your work with the Writers Guild. Some people are worried about, lots of writers, especially new writers, are worried about their things being stolen. Don't worry about that. It happens, but it doesn't happen nearly as much as writers think it does. So the thing you're gonna do before you say you have a meeting and you want some producer or a studio or something, and you wanna make sure that your work is registered, you go to the US Copyright Office. It costs $85 to register your script, sometimes, or 65, one of the two, 65 or 85. But do not register with the WGA because it does not protect you. WGA, some people are drawn to it because it's cheaper, and it's intentionally done that way to get your money. But the registration only lasts for 5 years when you do it with the WGA. And then that means you have to re-register. But the US copyright lasts your entire life plus 70 years. And if, worst comes to worst and somebody compromises your work, you cannot get damages if your work is only registered with the WGA. The WGA can just show up and say, yeah, this writer registered it 4 years ago, and that's all it's good for. But you get the same thing from the US Copyright Office. Thank you for that, reminding me of that.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to thank you, Craig, and for everybody for tuning in. This has been a really awesome discussion. It's always good to be reminded of the tools that are there, and for those who are new, to be learning them for the first time. Just a couple of reminders for everybody as we kind of make our way out into the world today. So you can register your Film Prize project at prizefest.com. I hope that you all do that. You can read all the rules and everything, but remember, your film has to be turned in by July the 12th. And that's complete with your documentation, proof that you filmed where you filmed in Louisiana or in Caddo Parish, depending on which prize you're going to go for. And it does take time to not only write your script, but get everything together and get it produced and do all of the post-production and everything. So make sure that you are starting now with that process of writing. And if you have any needs as far as getting connected with other people or finding places to connect with other filmmakers in the Northwest Louisiana area, please reach out to me or Rob. I'll put my email in the chat before we leave today, but it's on the website as well. We also have a South Louisiana counterpart. She couldn't be here tonight, Beth Brevant, and her email address will be available in the chat as well. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you. And we're going to do one thing before we leave. Craig, you know what we have to do at the end of every prize event, right? So,
yes, I think I do.
Awesome. We're going to do it on 3, and you guys can join us in your house or at your job, wherever you are tonight. And we're going to do it on 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Viva la
Viva
Film
Prize Fest. Oops, I didn't get it right.
Film Prize, Prize Fest. It's all one big family.
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you at our next event in March. Be checking out the Facebook page for that. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Night.